With Dane Waters. I'm your host, Dane Waters. It's always a pleasure to be here. I'm broadcasting today from lovely, beautiful Vietnam. And I'll tell you, this is a stunningly beautiful country. I'm up in Hanoi. The last time I was in this country and I was broadcasting, I was down in Ho Chi Minh. And I'll tell you, the difference between the two cities is just like night and day. Where, up in the north in Hanoi, which was the capital of North Vietnam, it's still very communist. You walk around, you see, communist flags, you see Lenin statues, you see all of this kind of stuff. It's really like you've been transported back 50 years. It's amazing. But the other thing that's interesting is that, this is a very culturally diverse country. I mean, I went to this, what they call the Museum of Literature yesterday, which has been around for over 1,200 years, over 1,200 years. I mean, America as a country, and this is what people forget, it's only been around for 300 years. We're a very new democracy, and actually, I guess the same could be said for Nigeria because it hasn't been around for 200 years as far as Nigeria. So there are a lot of new countries in the world. But anyway, enough of that rambling about that. But what's going on in the world, and what's going to be relevant to this call is what's going on with Donald Trump in the MAGA world, where he's under a lot of pressure these days because his base is very upset with him for many reasons. One is specific to Jeffrey Epstein and whether or not Jeffrey Epstein, a lot of the MAGA base believe that Jeffrey Epstein was murdered, didn't commit suicide, and he was murdered because he has this list of prominent people that were taking advantage of his niceties when it came to women. But the Attorney General came out the other day and said that that's not true, that he did commit suicide and that there's no master list. So his base is very upset, thinking that he's hiding stuff from them, and then on top of that, he's giving new consideration of what he may do to support Ukraine, which is upsetting his base. So there's a lot going on as far as Trump and additional tariffs and things of this nature. So what that means for the Trump world, I don't know. Trump can change his mind tomorrow about anything, so we just never know. So. But with our first guest and our most prominent guest, which we'll get to right after the break, we're going to be talking about Trump, his impact on Africa, and what the new tariffs mean. And there's a lot to talk about, especially, as I said, this whole show is dedicated to what's going on in Africa and Nigeria. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with our first guest. Thank you very much.
What we've always maintained is the never Trump move. I'll break it down a bit. Nigeria, Lagos has become one of the largest exporters of Brazilian ivory in the world.
Live in a third world nation where your votes will get stolen if you can vote for your law.
Welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters. We have a lot to talk about today, and today's focus is going to be about Africa, and not just Africa, but specifically what the Trump universe means for Africa, because there's a lot going on, as we know. I won't spill the beans, as they say. We'll let our prominent guest here, Senator Ben Murray-Bruce, who's also the chairman of Silverbird Studios. Anyway, Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dane. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. So let's talk. First of all, I don't know where to begin this conversation other than, there were 5 countries, I believe it's 5 countries that were just invited to Washington to meet with Trump. And, and these are what I would consider very small countries compared to others in Africa. What do you make of the fact that Trump just invited these 5 nations for a meeting at the White House?
Well, first of all, I don't know what the agenda is, or what he wants to accomplish with those 5 countries. It can't be for strategic military purposes because they're very small countries, and it can be for economic reasons. I don't know. Only Trump can answer that question. But he didn't invite Egypt. He didn't invite Nigeria. He didn't invite South Africa. So maybe we should ask Trump directly what he wanted to accomplish by inviting small countries to the White House. I don't know. That's a hard one.
Well, first of all, you'd have to assume that he has a logic behind what he did, but let's assume that he did for a second. Okay,
Right.
let's live in a world. Let's live in a world and assume he did. But this is the thing. What's been a little frustrating for me is that listen, Nigeria is a powerhouse. There's no doubt about it, and it has, in my opinion, It's definitely, as you know, I've been around Nigeria for a long time and it's gone through its ups and downs. And I think that in many ways it's making a rebound in certain areas.
Yeah.
But I would argue, let me ask you this. I would argue that he invited well, first of all, I have to back up and ask you one thing.
Yeah.
What do you make of, before we even get into some policy things, what do you make of the fact that he was commenting on how great Liberia's president's English was? What do you make of that?
I think he genuinely does not know anything about Africa. He doesn't know how we speak. He doesn't know much about Africa. And he probably doesn't know that Liberia was set up by free slaves from America. And I don't know how many Africans he's met in his lifetime. I don't think it was an insult. I just think he didn't know, and he was pleasantly surprised in how well the president spoke. That's my view. I don't think some people think he was insulting Africans. I don't think so. I think he genuinely does not know, and he had never come across a bunch of Africans, and so he probably just didn't know how we communicate over here.
Well, yeah, okay, okay. Well, first of all, I agree with you. I don't think he meant it as an insult. I don't think he just was in any way trying to insult the president of Liberia. But I do find it quite interesting that first of all, it's just, well, the way he conducts foreign policy is a little mind scratcher as it is. But why would you even say that? Hey, dude, hey, your English is good. I mean, come on, in front of the press, are you going to like slap him, back slap him, and when you're in the green room before him?
Because Trump says what he thinks. That's what he does. He's just not a normal president. There's never been a president like that in the history of the world. The only other guy that would say something like that was the president of Mozambique, Samora Michel, when he met Ronald Reagan at the Rose Garden. He went up to Ronald Reagan and said, "Oh, you look so big. You look so tall. Yeah, I didn't know you were so big." And he kept touching Ronald Reagan's hands when they met. Because I met Samora Michel in '86 before he was killed. And Samora Michel just says what comes out of his mouth. So okay. he's like Samora Michel or maybe Idi Amin.
Okay, listen, yeah. Well, first of all, I do agree. I think like to be a president, I think it's fine to speak what's on your mind. There's no doubt about it. But okay, just here's a world alert for everyone watching the show and listening to the show. Liberian's official language is English, just so you know. So if you meet a fellow Liberian around the world, you don't insult them by saying, "Oh, you speak great English." Yeah. It's read the history books. But I do think it's a commentary. Well, first of all, there's 260 some odd countries in the world. I don't expect any president to fully understand what every one culturally is. I've been in the White House. I understand that, but this is one of those things where I do believe one of the problems we're having around the world is a lack of education about what the world is like and the different cultures. And I think it's very important. If there's any takeaway from this, is that the world needs to learn more. Okay, so let's go back to this other question. The 5 countries that he invited. I would argue, what Trump is doing, if you look at what he's doing in Central America, where he's going to target the president of El Salvador and others, and where he's reaching out to Morocco, and he's reaching out to some like Libya, and now, he's also reaching out to these 5 West African countries. What he's trying to do, in my opinion, is cultivate smaller countries who will do his private bidding. For example, in El Salvador, America has created one of the largest prisons for some of our baddest criminals, our hardest criminals, and also a lot of people who are in the country illegally. And I think that one of the things he's trying to do in Africa as well is find home for these people as well. So, a country like Nigeria would probably never want to be part of that, but countries like, Burkina Faso and others that need the revenue, I mean, of course, it's a great opportunity for them. So I only say this because I think it's erroneous for people, any politician in the country of Nigeria or around the world, to criticize the President Tinubu for not being invited. I think that that's just honestly just not proper in my opinion, because it doesn't really bear fruit as far as the facts are concerned. And how would you feel? I mean, do you think that it's a slap in the face to President Tinubu by not being invited?
No. If you invited President Bola Tinubu to the White House, and President Trump said, "President Tinubu, I have a favor. I'm going to send you 100,000 criminals to be kept in Abuja, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars." President Tinubu would say flat no. He knows that. He's not going to. If you ask the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, he'd say no. If you invite Sisi, president of Egypt, he'd say no. So it's a waste of time inviting presidents of great African countries for requests we're going to turn down anyway. Now, if you ask a small country, would you like to keep 50,000 criminals in your country, and you're going to pay me $25,000 per criminal plus pay all the expenses, and I got a foreign policy problem or I got a deficit in my budget? Sure, I'll say yes. It's an economic transaction. I'm going to say as long as the criminals stay in prison, sure. If for a small country, cost you nothing. They'll do it. So yeah, so you're not going to invite Nigeria. We're going to say no. We're very proud people and we're a rich country. We're not going to do it. So it doesn't make sense to invite President Tinubu. President Tinubu is not going to accept it anyway.
No, and I think it's a very important point that we need to get across. We're going to talk more about Africa and Africa as a whole here, but what Trump's foreign policy seems to be right now is to go after the smaller countries where he has an opportunity to make a big difference. I mean, and to kind of coerce them into doing, his bidding or whatever it may be. And you see this all around the world, which is where, he sucks up to big countries. Sorry, I'm going to take my glasses off because they keep sliding down my nose. I'm sorry. It's like, sorry, audience out there, I got new glasses and they're just sliding down my nose. So, I don't want to look like an old man, like looking over my lens. Anyway, so I apologize. I will take them off. Now, Now, the problem with that, Ben, is I don't get to see your beautiful face, Ben, so I'll just have to squint there, but there you go.
I can see you. You can't see me. That's okay.
But no, and this is where we have to understand what Trump's foreign policy is, as best anyone can understand it. Is that and I'm going to go off on a little tangent here for a second, and talk about Iran, which is not the subject of this show, but I think it puts this in perspective. Trump doesn't mind going after countries that can't directly fight back against America. He'll go after Iran and bomb them because he knows that they can't fight back. He'll go and attract businesses with Central American countries like El Salvador because he knows that he has clout over them. He'll go to smaller African nations because he has clout over them, because he knows that he can exert his power and influence over these smaller countries and do things that won't push back against America and just say yes. But as you said, larger, more industrious and successful countries like Nigeria and South Africa and Egypt, there's no outreach to them because he can't. They're in a position to say no. So let's talk. I'm going to say let's talk some common sense here, which is a phrase you like because you're really into common sense.
Yeah.
So common sense wise, where do you think? By the way, I don't think I've asked you this question in a while. What is your perception about where things stand in Nigeria? Where do you think the President Tinubu has taken the country?
I think, like I said in the interview we had not long ago, he took very, very painful but necessary steps. There's nothing anybody else would have done or would have gone bankrupt. We had to fix the economy. He had to make key appointments. The first appointment that was very, very critical was National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, which was very, very critical in securing our borders and making sure we were safe. It's a very, very tough job. It takes a while. There's other indoctrination that needs to take place, but that is work in progress. We then appointed Yemi Cardoso, the CBN governor, to stabilize the currency, which is done very, very well. And we have a stable economy. The currency is stable, it's getting stronger. And again, it was painful for the devaluation, but that is going on well. Then he said, I think what he's done to infrastructure, I think, is what Roosevelt did during the Great Depression. Here's the biggest problem in Nigeria. If you had World War III today, Nigeria will be self-sufficient. All the fruits, all the food, everything we need to survive, you have in the country. The biggest problem you have is if you want to get food from the north to the south, it takes 3 days. From the east to the west, it takes 3 days. There is no way to interconnect the country with roads and rail. And he's focusing on that. And a lot of people miss the point. If you grow mangoes in the north and it takes 3 days to get there, two things. One, it's not going to be fresh. And two, it's 4 times the price. But if the infrastructure is right, rail and roads, and you can move goods from the north to the south, east to the west in 12 hours by train or by road, then cost of food items drop significantly by as much as 70%. You need to get it right. Without the infrastructure, you can't do it. And he's spending a fortune on infrastructure, the Calabar Coastal Road, the Maiduguri, the Maiduguri Road. And these things are important. It takes time, but ultimately, cost of living will drop, cost of food will drop, inflation will drop, and we will see the benefit. And sometimes, when great leaders show up, it takes a while. When they leave office, they say, wow, we miss him. But it's the pain we have to go through. President Tinubu is doing a great job. It's painful. I think the biggest problem is maybe they're not communicating what he's doing to the public enough. If they did that, they will understand. You got to take short-term pain for long-term gain. There's just no way out of it. Every great president must do that, otherwise the country collapses.
No, I agree. Listen, politically around the world, that is the thing. I mean, every country that has economic issues, people get upset with the European Union, not the issues, the governmental entities which give money, IMF, for example, International Monetary Fund, like in Greece, they require austerity programs in order to give the money. They require austerity programs in Spain. I mean, and the pain people went through, and they hated it. Yet those austerity programs made these countries economically viable. So you're right, no pain, no gain, and that is exactly what has to happen. So let's talk about Trump again and in Africa. Do you think that the Trump administration economically is is investing properly in Africa?
I don't think Africa is his focus, but is Trump any different from previous presidents? All the coups that took place in Africa after independence were CIA inspired. You overthrew governments all over Africa because they disagreed with your policies. Lumumba, a lot of African countries were overthrown because he just disagreed with them. So is Trump basically saying what he's thinking, as opposed to previous American presidents who worked with the CIA to destabilize African countries? That's a question. And two, historically, Republican administrations have been good to Africa. The Democrats not so good. So I don't know. Trump is facing a world different from a Cold War between the East and the West. Now he's dealing with Iran and Israel, China and Taiwan, Russia and Ukraine. Maybe his focus is not here, not because he doesn't want to, but because circumstances of the world that he finds himself in is different from what he imagined. He keeps talking about peace, but then we have all these wars. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Okay, let's talk about that. I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, I know he has a lot of focus all over the world, but what to me that misses in his foreign policy is, for example, he's going after BRICS right now, okay, which is Brazil, Russia, and India and China. You know, the BRICS is so it's South Africa. I mean, and he's going after them, and he's actually even proposing of putting a 50% tariff or whatever it is on Brazil if they continue their investigation of Bolsonaro. I mean, he's using tariffs as a weapon, which I think is a little nuts, but. But when it comes to BRICS, I mean, where do you think Nigeria fits? Let me say this, because you're right, because there is a global conflict war between East versus West versus China and BRICS and America. And all the countries in between are going to have to choose a side. Where does Nigeria come down in that regard when it comes to BRICS and which side to choose between China and America?
First of all, if you look at Nigeria's foreign policy since independence, we're always non-aligned. We never choose the East or the West. We want to be neutral. We don't want to get caught up in a war between the East and the West, whether it's a real hot war or a cold war. So I don't know if we're a member of BRICS, so we're trying to become a member of BRICS. But I think it's important for Nigeria to be neutral and to trade with every bloc. But if BRICS brings some advantages to Nigeria, especially with the naira being used to buy products in China and vice versa, it helps our economy. We have to survive. We cannot support country A or country B for the sake of their foreign policy or their domestic policy. What is important for us is what makes sense for Nigeria and what makes sense for Africa. Historically, Africa is the centerpiece for Nigeria's foreign policy. It has always been. And we've always won trade for ECOWAS, we always trade for AU. And so I think BRICS is important for Nigeria. And what Trump is doing is what empires do when they are no longer the dominant force. They're trying to hold on to power as much as they can. America is not the major manufacturing hub of the world today. It's now China. Now, so if you're president of the United States and all of a sudden you are not the manufacturing hub because you're not competitive, you might be envious or jealous or angry, and you want power back to your base. And that's difficult because cost of production in China is cheaper in China, in Vietnam, in South Korea than the United States of America. So I can understand why he's doing what he's doing. I disagree with it, but I can understand. For Nigeria, we have to do what's best and right for us. And what's best for us is 220 million people we have to look after and lower the standard of living.
Yeah, well, listen, you're going to be on the next segment as well, so we got to take a quick break here.
Okay.
So let's take a quick break from Around the World with Dane Waters, and we'll be back with our distinguished guest, Senator Ben Murray-Bruce. Thank you. Welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters. We are honored to have with us Senator Ben Murray-Bruce. So we have a lot left to talk about for the next 20 minutes. So I want to come back to the economic issues in a second about China and and the United States and the world being divided up. But there's one issue that immigration. Trump has made immigration a really important pole in his tent, as they say. And he just introduced some new restrictions on Nigerian visas. I mean, what do you make of all that?
Well, I studied the subject a long time ago, and these are the facts. The French, the British, and the Americans can run their embassies in Nigeria by collecting visa fees from Nigeria. You don't have to send any money to the country. There's an imbalance of travelers leaving Africa to these countries are Nigerians and Americans coming to Nigeria, the French or the Germans, and so on. People come to Nigeria for business, not tourism. We go abroad for everything else in the world. Now, it makes sense if the Nigerian government asks for 3 months visa and a $150 fee to come to the country because you're using the money to look after the embassy staff in these countries because you have foreign exchange scarcity. It makes sense from a government point of view to raise funds. But it made no sense in the sense that millions of Nigerians who want to travel out of the country will have to pay a ton of money to these countries and have a shorter stay. So I think, first of all, Trump has a right to run this country any way he wants to. The State Department has a right to do whatever they want to in terms of who they want in the United States of America. We have no right to say to them, you can't do this or you can't do that. But if we're allies and friends, there should be middle grounds. We should go back to the old policy of 5 years for frequent travelers, reduce the visa rate, and I think Nigeria should take the lead and say to come to Nigeria, it costs you $10. So if a Nigerian wants to go to America, it'll cost you $10. Reciprocity. I think that's the solution. To get into a debate about this, nobody wins. I think the solution, we lose in Nigeria, Americans don't lose, because millions of Nigerians go to America, a few hundred Americans come to Nigeria. So it's a lose-lose situation for us and a win situation for America, because this policy means not only will you have fewer Nigerians in America, the United States government will make a ton of money for applicants for visa. So yeah, that's my take.
Well, but okay, but the rumor is, one of the rumors is, goes back to what we talked about earlier, is that one of the reasons that they are quote unquote punishing Nigeria is because Nigeria won't play ball on, whether to allow prisons in the country and to take the refugees or immigrants from the United States, which is once again why he invited the five, in my opinion, the smaller countries in. But so basically, Trump is using the visa issue as a punishment to Nigeria for not playing ball with him. I mean, do you think it's you talk about building strategic partnerships? Do you think it's good that if a country says no to him, that he punishes them in such a way that even though something as simple as
first of all, is what you're saying accurate? Is it really true?
I don't know. I don't know. It's true. It's I don't know if it's true or not. But
okay,
let's live in the world where it's true. Okay.
Listen,
it wouldn't be far-fetched. Let me say, it wouldn't be far-fetched considering he's threatening Brazil with tariffs if for not dropping, unless they drop an investigation of Bolisario, the former president there. So it's not like outside the realm of possibility.
I hate to comment on the speculation on a sovereign country. So if indeed Trump made that request, the Minister of External Affairs should respond and let us know if that is true. If hypothetically, he did make a request that we should have prisoners in Nigeria, then I agree that Nigeria should take a tough stand and say no, regardless of the consequence. We're not a banana republic, so we cannot accept. Nigeria is too great a country to accept prisoners. If they're from Venezuela, send them back to Venezuela. How is that our problem? And no,
I agree. I'm sorry. I'm reaching over there because you know what? Today is like a technical difficulty day. I didn't plug in my computer, so the battery's about to go dead. I'm like really all, I don't know what's going on with me, Ben.
Go ahead. You go to fix your computer.
No, I did it. I was able to multitask, listen to your answer, and plug it in at the same time. So,
okay.
But listen. I respect. Let me tell you this. If this is true, okay. If this is true, if it's true, then I have to, applaud a sovereign nation for standing firm and saying no. I have to applaud it for that because whatever the consequences are, and that just shows because what Trump is doing. And once again, I'm not an economist. I say it all the time. I don't know if his economic policy is going to, reap all these gains to America that he talks about. I have no idea. But when you use it as blackmail for no either way against countries, I just fundamentally think it's wrong. I think it's just being a bully. I think it really is just being a bully, and I think more countries need to stand up to him. I really do. And listen, if he wants to be a badass and a bully, be a bully to Ukraine, be a bully to China, be a bully to the evil North Koreans. I mean, be a bully to the bad people. Yeah. And not countries like Nigeria that should be strategic partners with you. Yeah. So speaking of that, we were talking earlier about getting mangroves, from point A to point B in hours versus days. You're right. I mean, one thing people don't understand: successful countries have positive and strong infrastructure. That's the reality. Yeah. If you can't ship goods from point A to point B and you don't have a dependable electrical system, then you're not going to be a profitable nation. That's just the reality. So China, as you know, is investing heavily in what they call their Belt and Road Initiative, where they believe that there should be an easy transport system around the world for products out of China, whether it's air traffic, whether it's roads, or whether it's shipping. Yeah. And they're investing a lot, especially in countries like Nigeria. If Trump were to come to Nigeria and say, hey, we're going to impose, this is another hypothetical. I know you don't like it, but I'll ask you a hypothetical. Another hypothetical. Because we're dealing hypotheticals, as I said, that aren't outside the realm of possibilities. And he says, "Hey, we're going to impose a 30% tariff on you if you continue to allow China to help with your infrastructure." What do you think the president should say to him?
That's a very simple question. If the Chinese are giving us $10 billion or $20 billion and doing joint ventures with us at a certain cost to develop a road infrastructure or rail or sea or air infrastructure, and let's say it's $50 billion a year, I'll say, Mr. Trump, give us $50 million, we'll get rid of the Chinese. That's all. I'm not going to get into a fight with you. Give us $50 billion every year. Bring Americans here, we'll get rid of the Chinese. We'll do a deal. If you don't do deals, I'll make a deal too. Now, if he says there's no deal, I say, well, how do you want us to provide these services? Then we're going to say no to you. Secondly, what do we export to America anyway? Crude oil. Okay, if you don't want a crude oil, we don't manufacture. We'll sell the crude oil to China, India, somewhere else. Nigeria can never lose this debate. What are we going to lose? Nothing. You don't buy anything from us anyway. You buy it from the Middle East. No, you buy it from Asia. You buy it from South Africa. What do we export to America? Crude oil, right? We'll sell the crude oil somewhere else. There's always a demand for our product. So I think hypothetically, if Mr. Trump said that hypothetically, Nigeria has nothing to lose, really, hypothetically.
No, well, okay, I agree with that. I mean, hypothetically, but the point I'm trying to get across with all these questions is that the people around the world, especially my experience in Nigeria, is that they think President Trump is great and wonderful, and America's a great country, which it is a great country. I'm not going to say anything negative about my country. But a country like Nigeria must stand up for itself. It must not kowtow to any country, and not even America. And I think that's an important message that we need to get across to the people of Nigeria and all of Africa, is that there's nothing wrong with pushing back on America. Would you agree with that?
I agree. Listen, right now you're in Vietnam. Where's that? Ho Chi Minh? Where are you exactly?
I'm in Hanoi. I'm up in the north. I'm in Hanoi. Yes.
You're in Hanoi. Remember, during the Vietnam War, they asked the leader of North Vietnam about the war with the Americans. His response was, "Why should I worry? I've been here through 5 presidents. In 4 years' time, they're going to change the United States president. Sooner or later, Americans are going to lose this war." And he was right. Whatever policies the US government has today, in 4 years, the policy will change. Because in the democratic world, you will have new elections, your policies will change, your leadership will change. So we should not be having a fixation on whoever occupies the White House at this point in time. 3.5 years from now, 3 years from now, somebody else will be president of the United States. The policy of that individual will certainly be radically different from the policies of Mr. Trump. So if I was the president of Nigeria, I'll wait him out. Just like
I think that's a very valid point. So these smaller countries that are in West Africa, do you think they should wait it out as well? I mean, do you think that the Africa Union should take a more aggressive role against the Trump administration?
No, they shouldn't. I'm making a deal. If I was the president of a small country, and you're going to build me, let's say I'm in a country with 50 islands. What's that? Alcatraz. You had Alcatraz of San Francisco. I'll say, okay, on one of these islands, I'll give it to you. You can put 100,000 prisoners there, but I want $5 billion to grow my economy. After 20 years, you take the prisoners away. Not going to hurt anybody. I would do a deal. I wouldn't be insulted if my population was 300,000, 1 million people, and you're going to give me all that money just to keep some people there. Now, if you say you're going to give me some waste, some nuclear waste or some toxic stuff that could destroy the environment, sure, I would say no. But if you're going to send me prisoners, sure, I'll do a deal with you. I will make deals every day. So the AU shouldn't get involved. It should be country to country. If Trump can get these 5 countries to accept prisoners for a lot of money, sure, I'll do it. That's my view. But for Nigeria, I would say no.
How critical do you think America is to Nigeria's future? Like when you talk about terrorism, you talk about military support. I mean, do you think that America is critical to the future of Nigeria?
Very, very, very critical. Look, There are two people in the world that are very similar: Americans and Nigerians. We have one and the same. Americans and Nigerians are arrogant. Americans and Nigerians are conceited. Americans and Nigerians are crazy. Americans and Nigerians say what they think. Americans and Nigeria are industrious. Americans and Nigerians have the greatest entertainment sports industry in the world. Americans and Nigerians are the most ambitious people in the world. Americans and Nigerians are made for each other. So I tell you, we are the same people. All your black athletes that are great, all from Nigeria, and there's no way we can survive without each other. We love each other. We want each other. We may disagree with your foreign policy at any point in time, but that foreign policy gets reversed. So it doesn't matter. You're in Vietnam. I'm sure when they fought that war from 65 to 70, when Ford became president, that's when it ended, 76, right?
73. 73.
73. Okay, the 20 years you were there. If anybody had told you then that you would be sitting in North Vietnam having this conversation, remember, when Americans left Vietnam, you left 500,000 babies, half Vietnamese, half Americans in Vietnam. 500,000 children were left behind in orphanages. When the war was over, Time Magazine did an interview of a young girl who was 17 years old. He said, "What makes you happy today?" The young girl said, "For the first time in my life, I can stand up and look straight." For 17 years, she was afraid and scared of her American blood. She always looked on the floor when she was walking because the North Vietnamese would prosecute her because she had American blood in her veins. That's how bad. Another story. When I ran the network, you had the East and West conflict. Soviet Union took Nigerians to Russia so they could indoctrinate them. When they left, they came to me. We had 50,000 American Nigerian babies in orphanages in Russia. They asked me to do the story. I said, how could I find their fathers? 50,000 children with Nigerian blood were stranded because when the Soviet Union collapsed, they sent the Nigerian students back. They had no money. They couldn't look after these kids. The kids were ostracized, not looked after by Russians because they had black blood. You left 500,000 babies in Vietnam because they had American blood. We need peace in the world. We can't afford to be fighting and killing each other and destroying the next generation of people. So I think Americans and Nigerians are one and the same. And I guess we commit the same crimes everywhere we go, we make babies. So please, I know we're in Vietnam. I don't want you to come back to me now and tell me you got somebody pregnant in North Vietnam.
No. Listen, you guys have a high birth rate as it is there in Nigeria. I don't think I need to.
We're talking of Vietnam now. Vietnam.
I know. Listen,
I know you very well.
You're embarrassing me now, Ben. You really are. But let's move on to something else. Yeah, it is a live TV show. So let's
in Vietnam, my friend, 500,000. You know what that is?
Yeah, well, okay. For the record, none of those 500,000 are mine. Well, that I know of. So I don't know. Okay. Thank God they're not going to do a DNA test here. Okay. But so let's talk about the future. You have what I really care about, just me personally, is that you're right. Peace. We need peace, but we can't do peace through capitulation. I mean, there have to be values that sustain that peace, because if every country sells out their values and just accept peace at capitulation, then the bad guys honestly are going to take over. And this is where I think Nigeria can play a much more prominent role. And I want your opinion on this, is that even though you say they want to be neutral, but shouldn't Nigeria take a more active role in the African Union in trying to push policies that are in the best interest of Africa? What do you think about that?
I think President Tinubu should be president of the African Union. And I think Africa should be united as a country, be one of the greatest economies in the world. I think Gaddafi was right when he tried to unite Africa. That is where we ought to be. Africa ought to be united, have one foreign policy, have one army, have a connectivity between all 50 plus countries, and because if we're not big, we can't be successful. Small countries can make great foreign policy. You're not going to have a seat on the United Nations Security Council. We have to be a country. Nigeria is a big country, Egypt, South Africa, Ethiopia, but united, we are better off. And I think the only way for Africa to have its place in the world is to be united as a country, as opposed to 50 some countries in Africa. Some are just too tiny. Cape Verde, Benin Republic, Togo, they're just too tiny. They're too tiny. And Congo is at war, where all the minerals and everything is Congo. They're at war all the time. But I'm happy Trump has facilitated some peace between Rwanda and Congo and Uganda. If that peace stays and we can survive, yeah, Africa should be united. And I think President Tinubu should try to be president of the AU, and President Tinubu should never apologize for what he's done to create the infrastructure Nigeria needs. It is very, very important. And those who don't understand, it's sad, but there's nothing he can do about it, but keep moving forward, fix the infrastructure of Nigeria. Once that is done, you have roads, you have rail, you have power, we can fix our economy, and we are less dependent on any other country in the world.
Okay, there's two quick things here. So we got 5 minutes left here. One is that it's interesting what you're proposing. Are you saying that Africa should become like the EU, where you have unified currency, unified? I mean, you think that, it's an interesting concept when you think about how many countries are there in Africa? 53 countries?
52, 53. Depends on all those fighting for independence right now.
Yeah, so you would propose, if you were president of Nigeria, for example, or head of the African Union, you would propose an African Union like the European Union, where they're truly united, not just through some organization like the EUN or the African Union, right?
No, I would start first with the EU one currency, then proceed like the United States of America, and all 50 plus states, 52 countries come together with one border, but let each state have their own police, have their own domestic policies, but the federal government controls foreign policies and the army. Make them independent, give them some independence, but the army and foreign policy and the currency in the center. And the capital will be Lagos.
And Silverbird would be the national television outlet for the entire continent, right? Just to be very clear with that.
Retired, but Nigeria would be Nigeria, or Abuja, Lagos, or Abuja would be the capital of Africa. And I think that's where it should be.
No, it's an interesting concept. And so let's once again, I have to go back to the whole Trump issue because, and one of the reasons we want to have this show is because, what is Trump has a mythical image around Africa, everywhere I go in Africa, whether it's North Africa, Central Africa, West Africa. And people have to understand that he's not the mythical beast that he is. I mean, there are issues with how Africa deals with him. So we have the visa issue. We have the fact that he is. I think there's a chance that he is not focused on terrorism in Africa like he should. There's an issue with him not investing in Africa. He was pulling support from USAID and others. So, I would argue on the whole that Trump has not been a positive for Africa. I mean, would you say he's been a positive for Africa or not?
Well, it depends where you stand. He is marketing himself as a conservative Christian. So if you're a Christian and you feel marginalized, then you hang on to him. Okay? Now, how has he sold himself? Maybe he's never been to a church in his life, but that's how he sold himself. So there are people who love him and there are people who hate him. But then again, Trump is not the president of Africa. He's the president of the United States of America. Okay? What I think we should do is for President Bola Tinubu to invite Donald Trump to Nigeria. I think it's sometimes difficult to conduct foreign policy, flying, sending your emissary to the White House. I think Nigeria should invite Trump to Nigeria for 2-3 day visit. When he comes to Nigeria, he visits South Africa, visits some other countries, let him see for himself. He can start by sending his wife, he can send his kids, he can send whoever he wants, but he has to come to Nigeria. I think once he comes to Nigeria, like Clinton came to Nigeria, like George Bush came to Nigeria, once you come to Nigeria, and you see the people and the love we have for the United States and the opportunities and all the warheads you want and all the business deals you can do, you can make a difference. But if all he thinks about is Saudi Arabia and the war in Ukraine and Israel and China, for how long can we talk about China? For how long can we talk about Saudi? After a while, you get bored. Africa.
No, I agree. I agree. And I hate to cut you short because we got to leave here in a second, but I agree. I think that first of all, I think it's a great idea that President Tinubu would to invite President Trump to Nigeria, and I think that President Tinubu, if you're listening, that's the word of advice from those two old bald men here. But number two, I think that you're right. I mean, Trump. I think that this administration. And I'm a Republican, so let's just remember that this administration is losing sight of the importance and the strategic partnership of countries like Nigeria and the rest of Africa. And you got 30 seconds to answer this question. Where do you see U.S. Africa relations in 2 years? What's your prediction?
If Trump takes the bait, he comes to Nigeria, he sees Africa for what it is, his views about Africa changes. Trump is a deal maker. He says what he thinks, and he thinks what he says. Now, he needs a different perception about life and about Africans. He needs to be here to see it. He's not watching it on TV. Watching it on TV, he's going to see the wrong side of Africa. He needs to be here. If he comes here, it changes. It'll be positive. And I think, one, we'll fight the terrorists. He'll give us what we need to fight the terrorists. And we want trade, not aid. We're not beggars. Trade, not aid. We don't want nothing for free. Just work with us as equal partners, and we'll be fine.
Listen, sadly, I got to wrap it up, but I love that saying, trade, not aid, because that's exactly where I think Africa needs to be. They don't need to be asking for handouts. They need to be showing that they're self-sufficient and can do it, and they can stand on their own. And I think that will do more to get Trump to support them than asking with a handout. So anyway, thank you, Ben, for being with us. I appreciate it as always. Sorry, I had technical difficulties and I was kind of all over the map, but it's always great to see you, man. It really is. So
always.
Thanks for being with Dane Waters for Around the World with Dane Waters for this segment. And next week I will be back in London to broadcast. And then after that, who knows where I'll be. But thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.